Okay, West Grandstand, are you ready? Let me hear it. Say go. Go. East Grandstand. Go.
Seated. Good morning and welcome, class of 2011. And welcome to the family and the friends of the class of 2011. I'm Richard Lariviere, and I have the privilege of serving as the president of the University of Oregon. Thank you. I'd like to thank our Oregon Wind Ensemble for the processional music. Please rise now and join me in the singing of our national anthem, led by the University of Oregon Gospel Singers under the direction of Andiel Brown.
Stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, o'er the ramparts we watched, were so gallantly. And the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave
the national champions, UO Gospel Singers. I'd now like to introduce those members of the platform party who will not be speaking. That's a lot of them. I would like each of them to stand and be recognized as they're introduced. Deb Carver, Dean of Libraries. Michael Moffett, Dean Designate of the University of Oregon School of Law. Michael Andreasen, Vice President for University Development. Francis Dyke, Vice President for Finance and Administration. Dr. Robin Holmes, Vice President for Student Affairs. Dr. Charles Martinez, Vice President for Institutional Equity and Diversity. Dr. Michael Redding, Vice President for University Relations. Professor Russ Tomlin, Senior Vice Provost for Academic Affairs. Professor Karen Sprague, Vice Provost for Undergraduate Studies. Professor Sandra Morgan, Vice Provost for Graduate Studies. Dr. Roger Thompson, Vice Provost for Enrollment Management. And Paul Shang, Vice President for Student Affairs and Dean of Students. Now, to bring greetings and a message today from the Oregon State Board of Higher Education is Board Member Dr. Linda Ciofetti.
Thank you, President Lariviere. I appreciate it very much. Good morning, class of 2011. I am honored to be with you here today, and on behalf of the State Board of Higher Education, I extend greetings and congratulations to you, your families, and friends. Today, all of us share pride in your incredible accomplishments that have led you to this very special day. I'm going to speak briefly about the investment that your families, the taxpayers of Oregon, and especially you have made in your education at the University of Oregon. There's been a lot of discussion in the media about whether going to college is really worth it and should be an aspirational goal of our society. With college costs rising and students having to frequently borrow to attend college, some are asking, does the return on investment exist? In any news cycle, every opinion is provided. It is on TV, computer, phone, iPad screens across the world in moments. Tweeted, emailed, simulcast, webcast, Facebooked, and LinkedIn. Fortunately, like others before you, the education you received is an immediate investment in your life, and over time will continue to grow. As a class, you will contribute to the state of Oregon, the nation, and the world. The value of your education extends well beyond a job, but of course, this is an obvious critical outcome for all of you. Your years at the University of Oregon will gain you personal benefits and provide significant benefits to society as well. The knowledge and skills you have gained will give you job and career flexibility so you can move among different fields and apply your problem-solving and analytical skills to any number of tasks and operations. You have learned how to approach a problem, break it down, determine how to set objectives, and move to solutions. In other words, you have all the tools, the potential, and the experiences to succeed. If you set your mind and your heart to it, you will do just that. There are a lot of statistics on college graduates and those who obtain higher degrees, and I'll tell you just a few. These also provide numerous benefits. They show that you'll be healthier because of your educational level, have higher voting and volunteering rates, make significant contributions to the state, be more likely to send your kids to college, give more to charity, have a longer life expectancy, have a higher degree of personal and professional mobility, and probably this one, which might be both interesting to you and your parents, be less likely to be incarcerated. You have been educated in a diverse global university community. Your favorite normal Friday night food choice was either unknown or very exotic to those just a generation ahead of you. In fact, when I was in college, a burrito was exotic. So we revisit the question we started with. Does the return on this investment exist? And I would say a resounding yes. So go forth, be proud of who you are and what you've accomplished. Your time at the University of Oregon has been and will continue to be extremely valuable, and it will pay off for you and the lives of all of those that you touch in more ways than you can imagine today. Cherish it and use it wisely, and I wish each and every one of you the very best in your personal and professional lives. Thank you, good luck, congratulations to the class of 2011, and go Ducks!
Thank you, Dr. Ciaffetti. This year we lost several members of the University of Oregon community. The university has chosen to recognize 3 students who passed away in the last year. We are awarding them posthumous degrees in their honor. All of these students were seniors who are on track to graduate this spring. Receiving posthumous degrees are Ellis Heyer, Bachelor of Science in Human Physiology, Colin Lamore, Bachelor of Science in Biology, and Alexis Pennington, Bachelor of Science in Business Administration. Please join me in a moment of silence to honor and remember these students. Thank you. Well, class of 2011, today is a milestone for you. I hope, I believe, that each of you receiving your degrees today can say that this has been a challenging, meaningful, intellectually stimulating, and joyful learning experience. This has been an extraordinary year for the University of Oregon. In short, it's a great time to be a Duck. Athletic success brought a lot of attention, of course, and that's always good because it focused a national spotlight on the entire university. It was a wonderful opportunity to remind the world and ourselves that we have champions across the campus, not just on the field. Faculty stars who engage in teaching, research, and service. Student academic champions who are taking their rightful place on the world stage. Collaborative and integrative research and service centers that are solving today's very real problems, training our future leaders, and creating tomorrow's economy. And you, the class of 2011, are the first alumni class in the university's 135-year history to claim your place in our stunning new Ford Alumni Center. As you and your families walk across the campus today, I hope you'll visit this spectacular building. After all, as of today, it is your new campus home, a place where you share the bond of what it means to be a Duck. And don't forget what that bond means. From now on, for the rest of your lives and beyond, as long as anyone remembers you, you are going to be tied to the University of Oregon. Because after your name, it's going to say University of Oregon, your degree, and 2011. And I know this, that degree is going to change your life. My own parents were products of the Great Depression. They had nothing. They didn't have the opportunity to attend college, but they valued higher education deeply. I was the first in my family to have that privilege. It enriched and shaped my life. That's the power of this sort of education. That's the power of the University of Oregon. And that's what this day is about, to celebrate that power. I will end by sharing with you some words of advice that I gave to our freshman class at convocation last fall, when they had just arrived on the campus. First, I told them to go out of their way to meet people. I said to them, there was a time in your life when every single one of your current friends were strangers. As you sit here today, think back on who you knew the day you arrived on this campus the first time. And now look around you. Try to imagine your lives without the friends you've made during your time here, the bonds you have created that will last a lifetime. The second thing I told our freshman class was to thank the people who helped them get here. And for you here today, you can add the people who helped you get through here. Thank your parents, thank your teachers, thank your friends, thank the people who encouraged, inspired, pushed, and reassured you. Make a phone call tonight. Go to your Facebook page, send a text. Never pass up an opportunity to tell someone how much they mean to you. Enjoy this day of ceremony and celebration. And to you, the class of 2011, I say again, congratulations and best wishes. Now, with a message on behalf of the students of the University of Oregon, it's my pleasure to introduce the outgoing president of the Associated Students of the University of Oregon, Amélie Rousseau.
Hello, everyone. I've been honored to serve as your student body president this year. Good job, everyone. Seriously. Graduating from college today is a rare privilege, as only 6.7% of the world has a bachelor's degree. Because we're in the privileged minority as graduates, we bear a responsibility to use our degrees to make the world more beautiful, more efficient, or more equitable. We will receive opportunities to speak for those who cannot or do not know how. It means that we must think critically about truths that are presented to us and shape new truths for ourselves as well. It means that as those who possess much, we must seek to serve and uplift those who possess little. A diploma will not necessarily mean life will be perfect or easy, but earning a degree will put us on a more direct course to professional fulfillment and economic stability. Attending a world-class research university will be an achievement that will last our whole lives, not just the years we are enrolled. It's a big, scary world out there, but I hope that you use this time of transition to explore the opportunities before you. My time at the U of O has made me a much more conscious citizen of the world, and I have witnessed the power of what motivated and intelligent students can do together. Finally, I'm very excited to see how our graduating class will shape the future of our state and country. Thank you, and go Ducks!
Thank you, Amélie. Well, you have witnessed a performance from our national champion gospel choir. Now it is an honor to introduce the next portion of our program, because it will provide personal narratives that describe the unique student experience at the University of Oregon. I would like to introduce Boris Bourget, who is graduating with a bachelor's degree in political science, followed by Isabelle Chou, who is graduating with a bachelor's degree in sociology, and finally, Hannah Dischinger, who is graduating with a bachelor's degree in environmental science. Boris, you're the first.
All right, well, I would like to begin by offering my best congratulations to the class of 2011. We're gonna try to not have my hat fly away. We have a lot of things to celebrate today. For me, it's after countless games at Autzen Stadium, I finally made it on the Jumbotron. So as a member of this class, I know firsthand that among you sits some of the most intelligent, selfless people that I might ever have a chance to meet. I am truly honored to have a chance to speak to you today. Today I want to talk about the collective responsibility that we now bear as graduates of this university. But first, I'd like to tell you a little bit about my experience as a member of the Duck community. I came to Eugene on a leap of faith. I had never been to Eugene before my freshman orientation. However, I knew that I would love Eugene for one important reason. It was the exact opposite of where I grew up. I was mostly raised in a rural Nevadan mining town in the middle of the desert. Politically, well, we'll just say that Sarah Palin and Glenn Beck are pretty popular there. Don't get me wrong, my experiences provided me with a unique experience that shaped the person that I am today. However, I was greatly attracted to what I guess I could call Eugene's laid-back culture and its lush green habitat. During my time at this university, I had the opportunity to organize and find funding for a gubernatorial debate on campus as treasurer of the College Democrats. I interned for a Scottish separatist party in Edinburgh, and I spent the past year or so as a weekly host for a hip-hop radio show on our college radio station. These are all experiences that I would have never dreamed of as a high school senior, and I'm sure several of you can identify similar experiences that have defined your time here at the University of Oregon. So I'm not going to move on from the part where I stealthily brag about my resume to the part of the speech that's actually important. When I was asked to write this speech, I was asked to focus on the legacy that I would be leaving at this university. While I like to think that I made some positive contributions to this community, the important legacy that I want to focus on is the one that starts today. Recently, Stephen Hawking provided a rare interview to the New York Times. If you don't know, Mr. Hawking is often compared to Albert Einstein for his contributions to theoretical physics and his research into the biggest questions surrounding our universe. Most notably, for most of his career, Mr. Hawking has been almost fully paralyzed after being diagnosed with Lou Gehrig's disease at the age of 21. At the end of the interview, the reporter essentially asked Mr. Hawking what he wants his legacy to be. Using a computer to speak, Mr. Hawking spent 5 minutes signaling the words to say, "I hope my experience will help other people." That seems like a pretty simple notion, but it's incredibly powerful. We don't all need to be genius physicists to have a positive impact on those around us. However, it is important to always remember that as college graduates, we are in a significant minority among a majority of individuals around the world for whom a college education is hardly a realistic prospect. We now have the tools to go forward and carve a legacy that will not only add to the reputation of our great university, but will make a positive difference in the lives of those we interact with every day. That is going to be our legacy, and that is what we need to work towards beginning right now. I don't know about you, but I am pretty tired of being spoken about like I'm part of some lost generation with nothing to contribute. While we likely won't all be the ones to cure cancer, we should never believe that we do not have the ability to pick up a cause and run with it. We need to make a commitment today that we will be the generation that puts public service above private interests. Woo. We'll be called idealistic and naive, but it's easy to criticize when you're sitting on the sideline with your back turned. The past 4 years have provided experiences that we probably could not have received elsewhere. And it's time that we use those countless hours spent in the library and the thousands of dollars spent on tuition to build a legacy that will not only better our own lives, but the lives of those around us. It won't be easy, and it won't come quickly, but it has to begin from the second you rise from your seat today. Congratulations, class of 2011.
As a native Chinese, I grew up in a fiercely competitive environment where I learned the value of being the best of the best of the best since my first day of school. For future careers, it seems that everyone will have the same competition again, since people of this generation in my country all want to be a competitive leader who gain great material achievements. However, My education and experiences at the U of O here have taught me to choose another path instead. A path to become a vision-driven leader of compassion. American colleges emphasize on leadership training, and so is the U of O. I still remember the freshman interest group I had with Professor Daniel Close that aimed to help college students to become better student leaders through self-exploration. To my surprise, Professor Close stressed that competition is never the key, but rather the nature of serving, compassion, and selflessness. This really contradicted my schooling in China, which taught me the role of the leader is not to serve, but to be served. Soon after, I attended the UO Leadership Retreat, where I had a chance to read the biography of President Lincoln, whose personality exemplified Professor Close's teaching. I couldn't help thinking, should the leader be the one to serve or the one to be served? In Oriental culture, being a leader means you are the ultimate winner of the competition. But from my learning here and reading of President Lincoln, I saw the privilege of being a leader is to have the leader himself serve and be the example of the society which foments a desire to serve among people. In the Oriental world, we have many great leaders. However, leaders like Lincoln or Daniel Close is extremely rare. Gradually, I realized how rigid I had been in those competitions and decided to be a servant leader instead. From then on, I know my path would be different. I would follow a more difficult path, not of that of a first-generation female college student, choosing to be a different type of leader in the Oriental world. To leave is to leave a legacy. As I entered my senior year, I knew I wanted my legacy to be generational and international. Therefore, I collaborated with a friend of mine to establish the Chinese Philanthropic Leadership Association here on campus, the first ever student group that focuses on international leadership training as our appreciation to the leadership retreat we had here at the U of O. We aim to cultivate Chinese students at UO to become better leaders of philanthropy, humanity, and service learning, instead of leaders of competition, by mobilizing them to get involved in charitable projects, as well as to foster greater understanding between American and Chinese students at the same time. This summer, we will be bringing Mr. John Duncan from the Holden Leadership Center and 2 other American students with us to undertake our first project in China, which is called Transforming Waste into Empowerment, to provide textbooks and other school supplies to 40 students from 2 under-resourced rural schools in China by digging into the country's urban waste. This project will promote on-campus sustainability and developmental equality between urban and rural education. Our project is a complete UO product because it's fully researched, designed, executed, and supported by UO students and faculty members. And it has been selected to be one of the Clinton Global Initiative Students Project of 2011, endorsed by President Clinton. I am bringing this dark legacy of servant leadership back to China where I grew up. And I believe this dark legacy deserves to prevail much further. This is the legacy that engineers cannot calculate. Government cannot legislate. Judges cannot adjudicate. Manufacturers cannot fabricate. Scientists cannot formulate. But only you can demonstrate. Now is the time to do it. And together we can do it. Let's all keep up our faith, fight a good fight, and finish the race to make this legacy sustainable and international, just as the U of O. Thank you.
Good morning. I invite you all to consider a Persian proverb that I've known for years, but that I did not fully appreciate until my experience here at the University of Oregon. It goes, "He who knows not and knows not that he knows not is a fool. Shun him. He who knows not and knows that he knows not is a child. Teach him. He who knows and knows not that he knows is asleep. Wake him. And he who knows and knows that he knows is wise. Follow him." Now, I'm sure that quote was crystal clear to all of you here, but in case you got lost after I used the word know for the 12th time, I'd summarize it as saying that you could know nothing with blind confidence and be only a fool. Conversely, you could have powerful knowledge, but if you are unsure of that power, you are as good as asleep. It is the combination of knowledge and confidence that lends true power to effective leaders. My experience here at the University of Oregon has held significant ties to this saying, as have the experiences of many graduating here today. I'd like to tell you briefly about my journey. When I arrived at the University of Oregon in the fall of 2007, I already knew where I was going to end up and what I was going to do with my life. Though I was only 17, I knew that I was going to become a small animal veterinarian and go into private practice. I would probably move home to Denver for work, and I did not appreciate the sentiment that was stressed at my summer introduction session that self-discovery was imminent and that I might want to reconsider the path upon which I had set out. I knew what I wanted, and the chipper advice that my student orientation staff leader offered inspired mostly surly eye-rolling on my behalf. Ironically, the most important thing that I did not know when I arrived was actually how little I did not know. I was, as my Persian proverb told, a fool. I feel confident when I say that I am not the only person here who was not aware of how little he or she knew upon arrival at an undergraduate institution. It turns out that I knew very little about what I wanted to devote my life to, or of what I was capable when my mettle was tested. During my first year and a half, I sat dutifully through long terms of chemistry, biology, and organic chemistry, but I never felt the deep connection to my biochemistry major that I had anticipated. Upset and floundering, it was the first time that I had ever considered that veterinary medicine might not be what I wanted to do. I wanted to help people, but I wanted to help them in a different way than a veterinarian might. I was beginning to know, but I was still asleep. Then, spring term of my junior year, it clicked. I took an upper division biology class called The Diseases of Africa, and it revolutionized my life outlook. The class asked its students to consider disease as something greater than biology. Instead, we looked at disease as a whole, as much a product of society, poverty, and inequality as it is a product of germs and parasites. I found that I had a great appetite for public health. In a way that veterinary medicine did not, it married my love of science with my desire to help people. I have spent my final terms at the university taking every class that I can that touches on health policy and management, and plan to pursue a master's degree in public health. I became heavily involved in several student leadership groups on our campus health center, and I was eager about each opportunity that came to me. I awakened to learn that through classwork and experience, I can engender great change in my field with dedication and passion. I hope that this is something to which all graduates here today can relate, a personal awakening as we delve deeper into our fields of interest. The knowledge I received during my stint here has obviously contributed to my development, but I think that it was the power of knowing my passion that has been the true catalyst of my change. Now, I'm not so sure of myself as to ask you to reflect on the proverb where I began and tell you, "I am wise, follow me." In fact, I think I'd be pretty distrustful of anyone who's that self-confident. However, my experience at the University of Oregon changed my perception of how I can use my knowledge, and in so doing, readied me for the next steps. I am here today wiser and ready to pursue future leadership opportunities. I know that being a duck changed the realities of my peers as well. As I developed, I also watched my friends awaken into artists who will enrich the culture of our world, into journalists who will keep the flow of information free and honest, into attorneys who will serve as advocates for justice, and into teachers who will help children develop. Clearly, there are many of you here today who did not connect with public health in the way that I did, but I learned from my experience here that it is a rare and difficult feat to embark on a journey of higher education and not connect with something deeply. I may have arrived here a fool, but I was awakened to my potential as a leader through my work. Today is a day for us to celebrate our awakening. Today is a day to look forward to a future where our confidence in the knowledge we gleaned as ducks will carry us to leadership positions in all fields and places. Thank you.
Thank you, Boris, Isabel, and Hannah. It's now my honor and pleasure to introduce our commencement speaker. Margaret Moore is the first graduate of the Robert D. Clark Honors College. She graduated in 1961, earning a bachelor's degree in education and Phi Beta Kappa honors. Margaret was a student in the University of Oregon's sophomore honors program before entering the brand new Clark Honors College, which celebrated its 50th anniversary this year. She was 11 at the time. She served as editor of the University of Oregon yearbook, the Oregana, in 1960. Green and yellow are in her family's DNA, with 4 generations attending the University of Oregon, including her grandparents, who graduated in 1909, her mother, who graduated in 1934, her son and son-in-law. After graduating from the University of Oregon, Margaret earned a master's degree from the University of Washington and had a long, successful career as an educator, school psychologist, and administrator for the school district in Issaquah, Washington. In retirement, she has been active in family support agencies in King County, Washington, including the United Way East Side Community Council, the Educational Tutoring and Consulting School, and the East Side Human Services Forum. Margaret reflected on her time at the University of Oregon at a recent anniversary gala of the Clark Honors College, saying, "It's always been important to me to find intellectual balance in things, to ask questions, and to test myself among the very best. Independent thinking has always been a hallmark of the University of Oregon graduates." Please join me in welcoming Margaret Moore.
I see umbrellas going up. We had a very, very interesting honors college commencement last night where we moved from the quadrangle over here to Hayward Field an hour later and all took our things home and dried them out overnight. I hope you don't get any wetter than that today. 50 years ago, I sat where you are today, but I've got to say things have changed. You're having a whole lot more fun than we had at that time. Commencement was a very formal affair, and we all had to seriously behave ourselves. And I went on the website and took a look and saw that they even told you how to decorate your mortarboards, which is a whole different feeling than we had at that time. And I thank President Lariviere for a chance to have a serious do-over. I know commencement speakers are supposed to give you the benefit of their knowledge and wisdom, but your president knew that as newly minted graduates of the University of Oregon, you were already fully supplied on that score. So wisely, he asked me to talk about something else, in this case, my 4-generation duck family. I first thought, so Hillary was unavailable? But that quickly shifted to, what on earth could I say about us that would interest you? However, in thinking about the more than 100-year span we cover on this campus, I realized that what sounded like all about me was really all about you too, about all of us here, parents in the stands. College life seems like a very personal 4-year experience, but in reality, the achievements of each generation always stand on the shoulders of the dreams and aspirations of those who have gone before us. You and I and all of us here are enjoying this moment because of those who have gone ahead of us and made Oregon what it is today. My family story matters only because it traces the evolution of our great 135-year-old university. Don't worry, I'm not going to go year by year. But I would like to share 4 very different snapshots of our family generations that highlight the incredible way the UNO experience has changed in the 20th century. Both of my mom's parents, as President Lariviere said, graduated from Oregon in 1909. They called themselves the last of the naughties. My grandmother was the granddaughter of pioneers who came by wagon west over the Oregon Trail with the brazen overlanders of 1845. Her family halted near the Dalles and settled in Sherman County. Early students were seldom able to go directly from high school to 4 years of college. And she spent a year at Philomath Teachers College and taught another year in the Oregon High Desert to save a little money, and finally entered Oregon again in 1906. Her dream was to be an architect, but the program didn't admit women at that time. So she ultimately settled for a math major. And wouldn't she just love to know that today the dean of the architecture school is a woman? That's Grandma. My grandfather's tale was quite different. He was a Chicago-born son of 19th century Irish immigrants who entered through Canada after the Great Famine decimated Ireland. They settled in Morrow in eastern Oregon as sheep farmers. To save for college, Grandpa worked as a surveyor for several years after school. At Oregon, he ran track before it was such a big deal and was an engineering major, a program which soon moved up the road to some other place. After graduation, he had a 45-year career with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, where his life's work was harnessing the Columbia River with its network of dams, shipping channels, jetties, and ports. In the next generation, their daughter, my mother, was the only one of the 4 earliest members of my U of O family to have what we now consider a fairly normal 8-year path through high school and then through college. Since her father had steady government employment, they were very little impacted by the Great Depression. You'll love this. Their parents sent Mom and her twin sister $120 a quarter to cover everything: tuition, room, board, books, but not much pizza back then. Mom and Dad met on the U of O debate team, traveling to meets in Dad's Whippet, which he steered with his knees while he played his harmonica. Don't try this at home. After graduation, Mom taught for 2 years in Roseburg before they married in 1936. Their marriage meant she had to quit work. Only one job per family in the school business during the Depression. Also, there was a feeling in the 1930s, 40s, and even into the 50s that a working wife somehow reflected poorly on her husband's ability to provide. Can any of you women ever imagine that being the case anymore? I don't think so. My mom never worked for pay outside the home again, but she was a community leader and always very supportive of my own career. My dad's route to his 1933 graduation from Oregon was hard, but probably not too different from many young men in the Depression. His family of 6 was desperately poor, and he was the first college graduate ever. It took Dad 6 years to finish college. He cobbled together both classes and work to finally earn a degree. He was both president and janitor of the campus YMCA for a place to sleep. He hashed in a sorority house to eat and worked in the shipping department of McMorran and Washburn Department Store in downtown Eugene to keep his beloved Whippet in gas. After a short career as a school principal, he served in World War II and finally had a long career as a personnel officer for the Corps of Engineers. Our 3rd generation of Ducks is standing before you. I entered Oregon in 1957, being a product of the happily ever after 50s. World War II and the Korean War were over. President Eisenhower was building our interstate highway system, and you'll love this too. Tuition was, what do you think, $75 a quarter. But I had a PTA scholarship and they paid that for me. Campus life was skirts and dresses only for women. We held penny drives for various causes and elected a regular parade of royalty for dances and events. You're looking at a former junior weekend queen, thank you very much. Although I'm sure you're saying, what's that, and why would they ever do a silly thing like that on campus? But I was even more proud to have been the first graduate, because academics mattered, of the U of O newly created Honors College. Through all this late 50s niceness, I remember something else quite clearly. Dr. Ralph Hustis, for whom the Hustis Science Building was named, was at the end of his career and a highly recognizable figure on campus. Short, wiry, with white hair and a mustache, he walked everywhere with his big dog in tow. Though he was a respected scientist, he also was something of a philosopher and gave an open invitation talk every year to graduating seniors. His theme in 1961 was, "Go for the stinky cheese." A pointed challenge to us to bust out of our 50s bliss and address uncomfortable issues. I've often wondered what he would have talked about had he any inkling of the trauma that the 1960s were about to unleash on college campuses everywhere and America in general. Our fourth and final generation, our son Bill, is a departure from our traditional undergraduate Duck family. He earned his MBA from the Oregon Biz School in 1989. Following graduation in 1961, I married 50 years ago tomorrow. My high school beau, who was finishing 4 years on some farm in Palo Alto. We moved first to Europe and then all over the US, frequently for the next 15 years. So never having lived in Oregon, our children went to colleges on the East Coast and in California. But the genes were powerful and lured Bill back for his graduate degree at Oregon. You probably feel like your time at Oregon ends today. It does not. Like those who have gone before, you also now have become an important part of the future of this university. Your achievements will be reflected in the success of the next generations. The worth of your degree depends on the continued strength of this university. Keep it strong, academically as well as athletically. Pay attention to what continues to happen here. If you value your education, invest in it, both personally and financially. And as my granddaughter suggested I remind you, don't screw it up. I'll conclude today with the best part of my story. There may be a fifth generation. Our grandson Jack is a high school freshman in Bellevue, Washington, deep in the heart of Husky land. But Jack is a total Duck fan. Nothing pleases him more than new stuff from the Duck store and tickets to an Oregon game. When Jack was in the 7th grade, he proudly wore his new emerald green sweatshirt with a big lemon yellow O on it to school. Some 8th grader confronted him with, "What's that big 0 on your shirt?" Jack looked him in the eye and said, "That's the number of games the Huskies won this year." I think you fit right in, don't you? My congratulations to each of you on your marvelous achievement. And special congratulations to your parents, too, who can now happily celebrate both your graduation and the fact that you're adding LinkedIn to your social networking. Best wishes to you all for a lifetime of happiness, good health, wise choices, and much success. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Margaret. We will now begin the official process of conferring the degrees. Candidates for graduate degrees will be presented by Vice President for Research and Graduate Studies and Dean of the Graduate School, Richard Linton.
Good morning. even better. Thank you. The Graduate School proudly salutes graduates receiving advanced degrees from more than 80 leading graduate programs. Let's have a warm round of applause for all of our graduates receiving advanced degrees. Will all the candidates for doctoral degrees please rise and remain standing? Dr. Lariviere, the qualified students are now presented to receive the appropriate degrees.
Upon the recommendation of the faculty and with the authority of the Oregon University system, I am pleased to confer upon you, the members of this June graduating class, the respective doctoral degrees which you have earned at the University of Oregon. Congratulations.
As we say in the graduate school, go Docs. Will all the candidates for master's degrees please rise and remain standing? Dr. Lariviere, the qualified students are now presented to receive the appropriate degrees.
Upon the recommendation of the faculty and with the authority of the Oregon University system, I am pleased to confer upon you, the members of this June graduating class, the respective master's degrees which you have earned at the University of Oregon. Congratulations, and please be seated. We will now confer bachelor's degrees with each academic dean presenting the candidates from their school or college. David Frank, Dean of the Honors College.
Will the candidates for bachelor's degrees in the Robert D. Clark Honors College please rise and remain standing until the degrees have been conferred? Mr. President, you rightly call the Robert D. Clark Honors College one of the crown jewels of the university. We are proud to host students from all of the university's fine colleges. Mr. President, we are proud we have contributed to your goal of increasing the number of students who win distinguished scholarships. Robert D. Clark Honors College student Josh Lupton, who graduated from Forest Grove High School in Oregon, won the prestigious Marshall Scholarship this year and will study at Cambridge next year. Mr. President, our brilliant commencement speaker today, Margaret Moore, is the first graduate of the Robert D. Clark Honors College. Mr. President, the qualified students before you who have finished a rigorous core curriculum and a senior thesis vetted by 3 research professors are now presented to receive the appropriate degrees.
Thank you. C. Brad Foley, Dean of the School of Music and Dance. Please remain standing. Unfortunately, you Honors College students have to stand the longest.
Will the candidates for the bachelor's degrees from the School of Music and Dance please rise and remain standing until the degrees have been conferred? President Lariviere, the qualified students before you from the only comprehensive School of Music and Dance in Oregon and the largest program of its kind in the entire Pacific Northwest are now presented to receive the appropriate degrees. May their leadership in the arts bring beauty, grace, and peace to the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Bullis, Dean of the College of Education.
On behalf of the College of Education, which has been ranked in the top 10 nationally for the past 5 years in a row, with faculty who have developed materials and programs that are used in every school district in Oregon and more than 20,000 school districts across all 50 states and 18 countries, and which accounts for 1/3 of the University of Oregon's entire external funding portfolio. I ask that the candidates for bachelor's degrees, who will become the next generation of social service professionals and educators, to please rise and remain standing until the degrees have been conferred. Mr. President, the qualified students before you are now presented to receive the appropriate degrees.
Thank you. And with that, it seems appropriate that we ask Timothy Gleason, the Dean of the School of Journalism and Communication.
Will the candidates for bachelor's degree in the School of Journalism and Communication, the best journalism school in the West, please rise and remain standing until the degrees have been conferred. Mr. President, the School of Journalism and Communication, a school that is recognized around the world for excellence, innovation, and ethics, is proud to present the next generation of leaders in journalism and communication, the class of 2011. Please stand to receive the... I got lost. We're proud to present the class of 2011 to receive the appropriate degrees.
Thank you. Francis Brunet, Dean of the School of Architecture and Allied Arts.
Will the candidates for bachelor's degrees in the School of Architecture and Allied Arts, the school leading the world in cultural, collaborative, ecological, and intellectual stewardship, innovation, and transformation, please rise, remain standing until the degrees have been conferred. Mr. President, the qualified students before you are now presented to receive the appropriate, incredibly well-deserved degrees. They are amazing.
Thank you. Kees de Kleiver, Dean of the Charles H. Lundquist College of Business.
Will the candidates for bachelor's degree in the Lundquist College of Business please rise and remain standing until the degrees have been confirmed? Mr. President, we present to you the next generation of pioneers in business, and they are ready to receive their appropriate degrees.
Thank you. And finally, Scott Coltrane, Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences.
Will the candidates for the bachelor's degrees in the magnificent, multidimensional, foundational College of Arts and Sciences please rise and remain standing until the degrees have been conferred? Mr. President, the qualified students before you are now presented to receive their appropriate degrees.
Upon the recommendation of the faculty and with the authority of the Oregon University system, I am pleased to confer upon you, the members of this June 2011 graduating class, the respective baccalaureate degrees which you have earned at the University of Oregon. Graduates, you may now move your tassel from right to left. And I now invite all of you to join me in a salute of thanks to your families and friends and bankers who have helped you get through this institution, who have made this a very special day for all of us. Please turn and offer a round of applause to all of those who made this possible. Please be seated. We are now at the closing of our university-wide celebration. In an attempt to make commencement more personal for the graduates, we have planned individual college, school, and departmental ceremonies throughout the day. How about that approval from on high? The program you receive for this ceremony is also meant to serve as a guide to the activities. You will find a listing of ceremonies, times, and locations, as well as a campus map. Graduates, please feel free to take your guests on your own personal tour of the classrooms, buildings, and outdoor spaces that shaped your time here. In addition, we invite all of you to the Grad Fest, where anything you need for a day on campus will be available. At the EMU, you will find food vendors, a photo booth, duck store booth, student performances, relaxation room, craft center demonstrations, bikes for loan, and more. We open the entire campus for you and your families to enjoy today. The Big O that our graduates have passed through will be here all day, so there are plenty of opportunities for photographs after this ceremony. We will now begin our recessional march, and I ask the audience to remain seated while the recession takes place. Congratulations to all of you, and go Ducks.
Thank you.